let's lead into the last story. I know you've been in many more of these, but there's a very famous altercation you were in with a very famous bully in the professional wrestling industry, and a very mean person in general.
I don't know if he's a mean person in general, but
I've heard a lot of stories
really?
and from people who have been picked on by him firsthand, and some of the cruel pranks that he played to wrestlers. But you were the victim of pretty much a behind your back assault by him. And it wasn't even your fault why he hit you from behind in the first place. So do you want to back up and tell the story of what led to him hitting you from behind? And then
I'll give you the short version, but I'll give you everything that happened. We go to Madison Square Gardens. Raymond and I were against the British Bulldogs, and Vince McMahon asked us to do a 20-minute match from Broadway.
Yes.
No winners, and they were world tag team champions, and the Bulldogs didn't like that.
Right.
And that started the animosity between us. We were a threat to them, which had a great match. I loved working with them. I enjoyed working with them. I thought they were great athletes. As far as the business goes, I think it's one of the best tag teams that gave an impact to the business as a tag team. We go to Syracuse, New York one night, not long after that. And there's 8 matches on the card.
Right.
There's 2 intermissions. There's an intermission after the 3rd match, and there's an intermission after the 7th match, before Hulk comes in on the 8th.
Right.
We're in Syracuse. We're on the road for I think 21 days. But there's a flight leaving at 9:30 from Syracuse to Montreal, which is only a 45-minute flight. Wow. So we get a chance to go sleep at home an extra night. When you're gone for 21 nights and you're gone for 20, it makes a difference. And then
right.
you get to see your kids, an extra 12 hours.
Yes.
So we asked Chief Jay Strongbow, which was the agent, Chief, we're on number 7 and the Bulldogs are on number 3. Would you mind switching the 2 matches? Because I already checked in the OAG. The OAG is a guide of flights that tell all around the world that tells you every flight that exists. It's called OAG. And there was no flights possible for the Bulldogs to go home that night. So I wasn't interfering with them except for an hour difference. But we would have 12 hours more at home. I wasn't even thinking about them, except making sure that they can't get home that night. So I wasn't causing them not to see their family so I could go see mine.
Right.
So there was no interference at all in their schedule. They had to leave the next morning to go to Calgary. So we switched the flights. And when we switched the flights, Chief Jay Strongbow went to see the Bulldogs. They said, hey guys, they said the Rougeaus are going to go on 3rd and you guys will go on 7th because they could make it home to see their family.
Right.
I don't know if it was because you say they were mean people. I don't know if it's because they're on steroids.
I would say one of them certainly had a mean streak.
I don't know if it was because they were on tranquilizers and uppers and downers and steroids and everything that existed, alcohol, that he didn't like that.
Right.
And we're not going to hide it that Mr. Fuji is one of the biggest ribbers in the business,
right.
And he was friends with them. Mr. Fuji liked to play those bad jokes too. He was always, seemed like he was bored about what his life was about, so he'd always try to get into doing some bad things to people too, and he had fun out of that.
Right.
So he was there, and finally what happened is I was playing quite in those days some cards with Mr. Perfect, Kurt Hennig.
Yeah.
And so that night I was playing cards and waiting for my match to go into the ring. And when I went into the match, just before going out, I packed all my clothes in my bag, ready to jump in. As soon as we jump out of the match, we don't even have time to shower. We're just taking a towel because I want to make the flight to go home.
Which is not a far flight.
Not at all.
Syracuse is very close.
It's very close. It's a 3-hour drive, so
right.
It's 45 minutes flight.
Yeah.
And so while I was in the ring, I came back from the ring right after to get my stuff, but Kurt Hennig looked at me, and when he looked at me, he says, so I looked at Kurt Hennig, and he went like this. He looked at my bag, he looked at me. He looked at my bag, he looked at me. He looked at my bag, and he looked at me. So I'm looking at him like, what is he trying to say? So bottom line is I don't have time to look. I look real fast. I don't seem like I'm missing anything. So I take my stuff. I get into the cab. Cab's waiting for us. I already arranged it with the cab to wait for us at the door. Everything's planned. We get on there and we just barely make the flight. And then when we get the flight, we get to Montreal. We spend 3 days at home. Before I left the building,
Right.
I looked at Kurt Hennig. I told Kurt Hennig, I said, I hope he didn't touch anything in my bags.
Right.
Because if he did, I'm going to tell Vince.
Right.
I'm not going to stand for this. Don't
Yeah.
touch my personal stuff when I'm
Right.
going
So
to
you're
work.
there, you're going to work.
You know, when I went home for 3 days, they were there all that evening long in the dressing room to stir everything up.
Yeah.
So Kurt Hennig, which was one of those guys who liked to play ribs too,
Yeah.
he went to see the Bulldog, and he told the Bulldog, he says, hey, Jacques is going to put you in some trouble with your jokes. He's going to stooge on you. So he actually pumped the Bulldog
Okay.
with, I believe, Fuji also. But I don't have any proof of that. I know Kurt did, but I think Fuji was in it too. But he was actually, Kurt was the one stirring it all up and telling the Bulldogs, and probably telling them all kinds of things. Like, hey, guys didn't even beat him in Madison Square Gardens. The guys are going to do this to you. The guys are going to take your belts. You know, I don't know what they said. I'm all inventing this because I'm just imagining still today that when I got to Miami, long story short, is 3 days later, my father comes to pick me up because in the wintertime, my father goes to Florida.
Right.
So when we fly to do a shot in Florida, we don't get a hotel room or a car. My father comes to pick us up at the airport,
Right.
and then he brings us back to the house, and then we go, he brings us to the show.
Right.
So my father brought us to the show, and when we got to the show, my father went into the stands, because my father didn't want to bother. He didn't like being in the dressing rooms. He went right into the stands. He got his ticket. And then we went to sit down. So when I went to sit down, Kurt Hennig was at the end of the locker room, his wall to the locker room, with a table of cards. And when I came in, he signaled me, "Come on, Jacques, let's play some cards." But by being at the end of the locker room with his back to the wall, that put my back to everything that was happening in the dressing room. So when we start playing cards, I was playing cards, I was holding my cards, and the next thing you know,
Your brother was injured at the
my
time.
brother was in crutches,
Right.
so he couldn't do nothing. And but we didn't expect nothing either, to be honest with you. But anyway, he was injured, so he couldn't do
He
nothing.
was basically managing you.
He was actually, walking, coming to the ring just to show the people that he's not wrestling somewhere else or doing something else, that he's really injured. That was, we were always professional like that. If we're injured, we'd show up anyway. And so I'm playing cards, and the next thing you know, the Dynamite Kid, Davey Boy Smith, Brett, Jim the Anvil Neidhart, Don Morocco, and Cowboy Ace Horton. They come walking in from behind, and the next thing I know is I'm laying on my back because he came and slapped me right here on my ear, and I fell off the chair. And I'm getting up trying to explain myself because I'm not a real fighter. And I'm trying to get up like, and I'm cussing too, like, what's going on?
shocked
I'm
that you
shocked.
didn't know
I had
this
no
was
idea
going
what's
on.
going on. And Kurt Hennig never warned me either.
Right.
So he was accomplice 100%.
Yeah.
You know, so I get up the chair and say, and then before I had time to turn around, he's punching me in my mouth. And now I don't know where I'm at. The next thing you know, I remember being on the floor and coming back to me. And then my brother starts with his crutches. So he tells him, he says, hey, he says, leave him alone. I remember hearing that.
Yeah.
And then he looks at my brother Raymond, which is on crutches, and then he punches him in the face. And then my brother backed up just a little bit. And he said, so my brother told him, you're going to hit a guy that's on crutches? So he looked at my brother and he says, no, he said, I'm going to wait till you heal and then I'm going to beat you up really bad. And then, so then he turned back, and then I got up, I went to see him. I went to see him to try to explain.
Yeah.
And then he started beating me up again, and then he was kicking me and was on the floor, and I was so ignorant trying to get up and try to explain myself. I'm not, like I said, I'm not a fighter. Anyway, so
And you respected him.
very much so.
Because he was a good, no one's arguing that he was a great wrestler.
Yeah. So, and in my mind, I wasn't the same caliber as him, in a fight. So anyway, long story short is I took my beating, and then Tony Gurria came to see me. I believe it was Tony Gurria, and then he was an agent with WWF, and he came to see me, and then he says, I was swollen so bad, I was swollen about this big, and I looked like the hunchback of Notre Dame, but in my face. And so he came up to me, he said, Jacques, he says, take your things and go home. I said, no. I said, I'm going to wrestle tonight. And my brother looked at me and said, let's go. I said, no, we came here to wrestle, we're going to wrestle. So then the Hearts, when they found out that we were going to wrestle, they were wrestling against us.
Right.
So then we got into the ring, and it was so funny because Brett went to see Dino Bravo. He says, well, what do I do now? What do I do? He says, well, just wrestle. Just wrestle. He said, Jacques not going to do anything. He just wants to do a job. You know, so I went into the ring, and then after the match, I went to the car. My father obviously saw it when I was in the ring. So, you know, so then I got in the car.
And as the barber said here, your father's a very proud man as well.
Yeah. So anyway, I get into the car. I'm sitting in the back of the car. Raymond's in the front with my dad. No word is spoken.
Okay.
From that moment on, till I got to my father's house in Hollandale, Miami, took the flight the next morning. For 3 days, not a word is spoken between me and Raymond. Not to my dad. I'm in a state of mind that I'm in my own world.
If you've ever lost a fight or been attacked, people will understand what that's like. It can be very emotionally
disturbing. And it's funny because the thing I do remember the most is when we landed in Chicago, the first day when we got back on the flight, when everybody was on the plane. The next day,
right?
We're all on the same plane now. We're flying to Chicago, and just before we land in Chicago O'Hara,
yes,
the flight attendant takes the microphone and she says, because obviously the Fuji or somebody or the Bulldogs or someone played a rib on me again. So they said she said, we'd like to welcome the WWF to Chicago O'Hara. We'd like to congratulate Jacques Rougeau on his boxing match last night.
Dynamite actually mentions that in his book.
Does he?
Yes. That's
and I'm in a state of shock here, and I'm hearing this, and I'm saying, he's really laughing, he's anyway.
Let's be clear, he hit you from behind. You were playing cards when he hit you.
I
so
wasn't.
It wasn't like he asked you to
not
go
at all.
outside.
Not at all. It was he was a coward. He acted like a coward. Bottom line is he acted like a coward. I'm sure he regrets it there.
Let's also keep in mind it was you and Raymond, and I respect and admire all the Hearts, but they were in the Hart clique, so you were also outnumbered.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And so anyway, so for 3 days we don't speak, and then finally coming back from Rockford, Illinois. For first words I tell my brother, I look at him, I haven't spoke to him, I said, Monday, I looked at Raymond, I said, Monday's TV. Vince is there, Hulk is there, Macho Man's there, everybody's there, I'm making my comeback. But I wasn't talking like this, I was talking like this.
Yeah.
Monday I'm going to make my comeback, because I couldn't speak. And Raymond looked at me, and I swear to God, it was so funny. We got into this is so corny. We got into the hotel room, and Raymond took the mattress, and he put it against the wall, and then he took a pillow, and then he started showing me how to jab and to hit and moving the pillow. He's moving the pillow, jab, jab. And he's giving me boxing lessons that same night that I said I'm going to make a comeback.
Yeah.
So funny. And so we did that for 2 days.